Okay, guys, so many of you asked, and you shall receive. I actually was approached by an actual entertainment attorney. So rather than me coming up with my own theories as to what's going on with generative AI and training off of copyrighted music, we can now ask an actual entertainment attorney. So I want you guys to meet Miss Crystal here. And she is, as I said, an attorney, an entertainment attorney, and she's an artist. She's actually a songwriter. She's an artist. She's a vocalist. And so I think that adds to her credibility to not only be on the side helping us make sense of the legal implications of all this, but she also feels the way that we feel because she's been on our side of the equation as an artist, somebody trying to put music out into the world. So she is the host of the Top Music Attorney podcast, and it's basically an amazing podcast and YouTube channel here, which is going to get you guys much better educated on the legal implications of not just AI generative music, but everything that has to do with your rights as a music creator. And that's one of the most important things I think, Miss Crystal, that you do is you help elevate our awareness of copyright, of legal contracts, of publishing rights, all these things that by and far music creators are kind of ignorant of or have misinformation about. They don't really understand it fully. So I think it's really great that you're here adding some sort of some common sense and some really in-depth analysis of what's going on in our world, especially as music creators. So that's really amazing. She put out this video about a week ago called Udio's AI Terms of Service Exposed. Do you legally own AI music? And I'm going to link it below. You guys should go watch it for sure after this interview and subscribe to Miss Crystal's podcast and to her YouTube channel. You're going to get a lot of value. But after seeing that, we sort of mutually reached out to each other, and it's like, hey, we really got to figure out how do we make sense of all this stuff, and what do you see moving forward into the future. So, Ms. Crystal, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background as a lawyer, and how does that background you have inform your point of view right now as generative AI music is entering our world?
Yeah, well, hello, what's up, fam, and to this community and all of our music business community. You guys are just amazing. So, as far as my background, let's see. Been a lawyer with a law firm. I run a law firm, and we've been doing this for coming up on 10 years. And before then, I got into music when I was 4, and then started producing my own music in my teens and put out records. And then I'm still an independent artist today. And then along that entire journey was signed with labels, signed with managers and agents and fired a lot of people and got super frustrated and wanted to pull out my hair and wasted a ton of money and figured out all the wrong ways to do things, but also figured out all the right ways to do things. And so, about the time that I decided to go to law school, it was all about just being able to protect myself legally, right? And I just go, for solely my music career, I don't plan on being an attorney. I just want to know how to read contracts and negotiate and all this stuff. And then I got out of law school and, I'd been kind of doing my thing for a while. So I was really well networked. Lots of friends who made, films and music videos, lots of music producer friends and all that. And so, they were needing help. And so I go, you know what, let me just see what I can do. So I got licensed and then I started my own practice. And, through all of that, I've always, first and foremost, been a musician. And that's why, it's funny because the law firm has grown so much. I have 14 people working under me and it's all super great. But as far as, our conversation today, I definitely have a real feeling about things, and I'm here to help explain, the legal stuff, and that's what we talked about with the AI, kind of review of terms of service. Can you use this stuff that you make? Because I know it's a concern. You guys are going to use these platforms, but do you own it? Do you have copyright in the stuff that you make? And how's this going to backfire? So those were the conversations, and that we had in the Udio video. And then as far as just, being really passionate about helping you guys, but also just with my own music career, just talking about this stuff and just being like, how do we navigate this? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, let's get right into that. So I'm prompting in something on Udio's site, something on Suno's site. It comes out, sounds pretty cool. I like it. Let's say, pay for their membership. I download it. What are my risks doing that? What are the courts saying right now in terms of the copyright of that music? How much of that do I have to interact with or create or prompt to potentially get a copyright for it? Where are we right now with all of these concerns?
All right, I'll start with the lawyer answer, which is pursuant to the Copyright Act 17 USC 102. It says that for you to have copyright in stuff that you make, you have to put your great ideas, right, your creative ideas into a tangible medium. So the good news, at least if you live in the United States, is that as soon as you do that, as soon as you actually go and record something or you write down your lyrics, you have automatic copyright protection in that. That's amazing. Now we do want to go and file federal, get the official copyright piece of paper that says you own it, okay? Because that's really important. If you need to sue someone, if you are going to try to get attorney's fees, it's required, okay? But the good news is that you do, technically have your copyright right away. And so, under the Copyright Act, it goes, but these have to be works of authorship, right? So it imposes this requirement that your stuff be made by a human, okay? So that's where we get into the conversation about AI. We go, well, AI, it's not human, right? We have machines, we have robots that are making this stuff. And so you go, well, logically, I'm the one that told it what to do, right? So I prompted it. Shouldn't I have copyright in my AI generated, stuff? And the answer is, at least as of now, is no. And where I kind of foresee this going is because we've had cases. We had, Sarah Silverman. She sued because she's like, hey, these different platforms, are studying my material. And she goes, I didn't give permission for that. And so therefore, I need fair compensation, all this stuff that because I'm losing money here. And she lost. And I think where we're going to end up seeing this going is that right now, there is no copyright for the AI created stuff. And it's going to get really complicated. And I talked about this with the Udio video. I go, well, Udio in its terms talks about the fact that at some point you're going to be able to upload your music, right? So your human made stuff. So we're going to have human made stuff with the AI stuff in one song. So the Copyright Office put out a statement about this last year and they go, hey, if your stuff is made with AI, can't register it. Don't even try. But if you do register something that has just a component of AI, you got to tell us with your application because that stuff is kind of carved out. You don't have protection in that stuff. And if you don't, and we find out later on, they'll go and cancel your copyright registration, which could be terrible if you're like dealing in a lawsuit and all kinds of things. So that's the state of the law right now. But I just go, look, what's going to happen is that at some point there's going to be, let's say, music, something that becomes a huge hit song that was used in a movie that was made by AI. There's going to be something that is so valuable to a company that they're going to go to war over this. And I think we'll start to see some change and people really fighting about this even more aggressively to say, no, there should be copyright in the AI stuff because corporations and anyone in between wants to own something that's valuable. That's not where we're at right now. Right now, we're in the gray area of, no copyright in AI. And so, the conversation is, well, I mean, is that how it should be? Is that how it should stay?
Great considerations. Yeah. And we'll see where the future brings. So my question, I think you brought this up in that video is, in 6 months, a year, you're not going to be able to tell that something was generated with AI. We're kind of teetering on that right now. You can tell right now, barely. Maybe some audience members couldn't tell though, but musicians, producers, we can tell. You can hear this weird artifact and it just feels robotic a little bit. But that day is coming where you're going to be listening to something on Spotify and you'll be like, is this human or is this AI? You won't know. So, what are the implications of that? And when you were saying, the Copyright Office is saying, hey, just be honest with us. Let us know if you used AI. Well, that's sort of a big vulnerability in the whole system because there's definitely going to be some kids that are just going to go generate albums and albums of music or even libraries of music and enter the production music library world or the stock library world or whatever. And they're going to say, oh, absolutely, we made this 100% ourselves. And to the human ear, you won't be able to tell. So where does that leave us? You had this really good point in that video about short-term consequences for engaging in this technology willy-nilly and long-term consequences of just generating your way into trying to create music for yourself.
Yeah. So, the big question was, well, even with Udio, can you legally use the music that you make and sell it? Right? Can you sell it? Can you stream it? And the answer is yes. Pursuant to their terms of service, which is the contract you sign when you get on their platform to make music, you're okay to use it commercially, right? So if you're like one of these businesses or you're a film producer and you want to make some quick songs, like you can use what you make. Now, there are requirements. You have to give them credit. And then conversely, they're like, well, we get to use the stuff that you make as far as just being like, our own promotion, just FYI. So there's all kinds of things that cover in there, just so you guys would know. But in the short term, I'm like, okay, I get it. There's lots of value that for people who just don't want to pay, or they don't even know how to get musicians together to sync music. Like there's all kinds of considerations. So we go in the short term, if you are the user, you're a musician and you're using this because maybe it writes better songs than you, or maybe you're just not confident in yourself, or whatever the reason is that you are using one of these platforms to make music for yourself, in the short-term considerations. Well, from a business kind of standpoint, are you going to be willing to tell people about that? You're supposed to, right? Pursuant to Udio's terms. But, does that, what's the perception that that creates for you as a creator? But then in the long term, and I'm like, as a lawyer here, I go, you don't own it, right? Going back to you don't have copyright. Udio is giving you a license to use and sell and do all the stuff, but technically it's limited. So I just go, I'm the person that comes in. Like last year, we sold $9 million of music catalog. And it's really important that we show copyright registrations. It was made by real people. You know what I'm saying? So I go in the long term. My concern is more in that realm, for clients who just, you're not going to own your music, and it kind of goes back to even my current sentiment, which is outside of AI, which is when you sign with labels, you don't own your music anymore, you give up rights. Like this is the thing that I am the most concerned about for creators.
Great points. No, I want to get your opinion on this. I have noticed a few, I'm not sure of Suno or Udio's terms on this. I think Udio isn't doing a paid option yet, but some text to music generators have business models where they say, come use our platform for free, all you want. You want the copyright for that music you just made? $50 or $30 a month. So they're selling a copyright to their users for a fee, although the courts are probably going to be disagreeing with the fact that that even has a copyright. I feel like that's sort of like they're selling snake oil that doesn't exist, and they're risking their business model on that. What are your thoughts on AI generative models charging their customers and saying, oh, did you want the copyright for that? We'll go ahead and grant that to you.
Under it sounds like if it was AI generated, there is no copyright. So if they're saying I'm going to give you the copyright, what they're really giving you is just a license to use it. But if they're saying literally, I'm giving you, pursuant to the Copyright Act, copyright ownership, which is required via the contract, and we're giving this to you. That's nice, but what my initial reaction is, no, I don't think they're giving you anything, right? Because the whole premise of AI does not carry copyright.
And also, how can they give you a license if it doesn't have a copyright? You don't need a license. That's the whole point of copyright, is it requires a license. So what are they selling to you if it's like, well, this is basically like air. It's just whatever. Anybody can have it. Anybody can copy it. So what am I getting from this license from you, right? That's where I'm getting a little, it feels like these companies are gambling, and it's the Wild West, and they're trying to see what they can, build a business model off of. And of course, this is what I think this conversation is so helpful for, is unsuspecting producers and music users might go to these companies and go like, well, I want to distribute this, so I better pay them the $50, or else I don't want to get that. I don't want them to sue me. Yet the entire legal system, to me, not a lawyer, this is legal advice, is saying they have no right to be giving you copyright or giving you we have not gotten there with our law situation yet. So
yeah, I see what you're saying. The only distinction that I would make there is just if you're using a service that then produces something, the copyright ownership piece is separate from them being like, this was only made because of us and our algorithm, our, all of our special secret sauce. So they are okay as a business to tell you what you can or cannot do. And in fact, most companies do this. They go, if you read like Instagram's terms of service, they're like, don't reverse engineer, there's all kinds of restrictions. They go, if you use our platform, this is what you can and cannot do. So actually with the license piece, they can tell you. And that's why we read the Udio terms and we go, do they even say it's okay for you to use this stuff? And they do. But that's why you read each platform's terms, because they can give you a license, because they go, look, the thing you made, we own to whatever degree it is, and we are giving you a license to use it. And so, I think that people may open themselves up to, potential issues if they don't follow these procedures. So I want to be clear on it, on like, they cannot give you copyright because they don't have copyright. And hopefully that's not how they're actually representing this, because that's a little misleading. But they certainly can say, we're giving you the right, which is a license, to commercially or non-commercially use the thing that you made on our platform.
Great. Yeah, it's a great distinction. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that point. So let's get into the fair use defense. This is sort of the crux. I feel this is going to be a fork in the road for us, for leading us down a path of this being an amazing, wonderful future, and a very maybe dark and challenging future. So right now, there's an open question Can a generative AI model, let's just narrow it down to music, not text or images or any of the other things. There's a lot of other things going on, but let's just really be specific here. If Suno or Udio went to just Spotify and trained off of publicly available music, not public domain music, they keep on using this word publicly available as if it's synonymous with public domain. That's what I'm noticing here. It's not the same. It's just mean that anybody with internet access can access it. It's still copyrighted though, right? So the question is, of course, these AI companies are going to say, hey, what we're doing is exactly what human beings are doing. We're just training off of copyrighted music just like humans do. And because we're basically just learning from these copyrighted pieces of music and then combining that with our technology, it's fair use, right? We are basically just a competitive player. And yes, we're more efficient, we're cheaper, we're faster. We're definitely going to be doing something that'll disrupt the industry. But under the current copyright law, the fair use doctrine, fair game. We're not going to be stopped. The other side of that, of course, actually, I'm going to let you take your point of view on that. What is your point of view on that entire point of view? What is your personal view on that?
Yeah, so just fair use real quick, under copyright law says if you make something, it's your special song, right? You have automatic copyright in it, and you're the only person that can make derivative works. You can make something based on it. You can duplicate it. You can sell it, like you are the boss. But fair use is a defense. Okay, so it goes, there are exceptions where it's okay to use someone else's copyrighted stuff, to use someone else's song. And so the courts will apply this 4-factor test. Okay. And the biggest elements that we typically look at, it's the nature of the use, how did you use it? Did you transform it in character, to something that was also artistic in your own kind of way? Did you harm the market in which it is in? So the court's going to go through this analysis, right? And they will say, well, if it's fair use, then it wasn't copyright infringement. And a couple of quick examples are like parody, right? So if you do like a very silly version of a song, you're literally making fun of it. It's intended to not, rip off the song. Parody is one. Education, criticism, commentary is also another. As an entertainment attorney, I teach a lot of stuff online on my YouTube channel. And I will react to music videos. So I'm using other people's copyrighted stuff, but I'm doing it for educational purposes. So it's okay. Okay. So that's just a quick overview of like when we talk about fair use. So then going back to your question. So then for AI, if AI is just studying stuff, copyrighted material made by real people, is it fair use? And so we go to the transformative piece. And where I thought, maybe this would be relevant is that earlier this year, Kat Von D, and I don't know if you saw this, but Kat Von D, she won her copyright infringement case. So she had done a tattoo, and this was a picture of Miles Davis, and the tattoo was so similar to the picture. I mean, it looked like she literally just like copied it on this person's arm, okay? And over many years, they duked it out, and the photographer said, you stole my picture, you didn't, pay me, you didn't get a license, you didn't whatever. And so, I'm seeking millions of dollars from you. And she ended up winning the case. Okay. And, the kind of similarity that I will bring to this is under fair use, we go, her version, even though it was like the exact same picture, was fair use because she transformed it into the tattoo that we see. And only Kat Von D could have done that. And I make the example, I'm like, if I sit here and I try to do this picture myself, it's going to be terrible. Right? Just because it looks exactly the same, it was fair use because it was her transformative version of it. So that's a human example. Okay, let's start there. And then, so taking this into kind of the AI space, we go, well, if AI is learning from human-made stuff, and it is now making something that looks and feels similar to the music, let's say, right? Similar to a type of song, but it's not taking anything from the song. It's not committing copyright infringement and is creating something totally new. Wasn't that transformative? And wouldn't that be fair use under the Copyright Act? So that's the argument.
Yeah. And so I definitely even can play, I don't even think it's devil's advocate. My personal view, I'm curious what your personal view is. My personal view is if a generative AI model never commits copyright infringement, and actually literally never steps on any individual, lyric line, melody line, creates literally all transformative music, or they even put on a filter that say, hey, don't ever replicate anything that we trained on. And some of them are starting to put that in there. I do see that as transformative. It's like, absolutely, you're doing exactly what we do, right? I listened to Blink-182 for years, and then I make some punk pop music, and it might have some similar even words or phrases that they use or similar melodies, but as long as I'm not stepping right on their toes and making something that's just like almost like a replacement song for one of theirs or a replacement hook, then it's all fair use. So that's transformative. So I actually would give them that benefit of the doubt. I think my point of view on this goes into the fourth element of fair use, which is that if you are doing something with copyrighted material and what you're doing is damaging the value of that original copyright material, which is another way of saying replacing its value, right? So if you're training, so with that tattoo, it's clear to me that that's not a copyright infringement because the tattoo doesn't take away the value from the picture. I still can go enjoy the picture. I still want to go buy the picture, use the picture, license the picture. It's all good. This tattoo is a completely different medium. It's, it's not a commercial tattoo. It's for somebody's personal arm, that kind of a thing. So I can see that that was transformative. My question though is with this Red Lobster situation, for those of you that don't know, Red Lobster was the first commercial like corporate client to go use generative AI to promote these new menu items that they're putting out there. They used something like Suno or Udio and generated all this music. Now, those 10 or 20 tracks wouldn't be possible without the copyrighted music that those models were trained off of, whatever they used. So that's, to me, a clear case that this technology is being used as a replacement, which means it is devaluing the original marketplace value. Because if they didn't have that AI model, they'd have to go pay a lot of producers and musicians and songwriters and mixing engineers. It's not cheap to secure an entire mixtape or go to a production music library and maybe pay a little bit less. But still, if you want it custom for your cheesy biscuits or whatever they're trying to promote, you got to hire some lyricists. You got to hire some human beings that can actually do that. So what is your take on that idea that generative AI models can potentially be replacing the value of the copyright music that they were trained on without consent?
Yeah, so I mean, you're devaluing the marketplace, and you're taking jobs. We talk about that as well. One thing I do go back to, and I just go, as AI continues to get better and better, right? So the AI music that we hear, the Red Lobster songs, for example, I listen to those. I'm like, I can tell, like, doesn't sound so good, but we're going to be beyond that. And it's going to be insane in the next couple of years, latest. So going back to the kind of like look and feel, we go, well, you can't typically get copyright infringement because something looks and feels like something else, right? Like as artists, don't we all do this? Don't we all listen to other bands and artists get inspired and then we go make stuff? And in fact, there's been one case recently that some people are really upset about on the outcome. And this was the Blurred Lines Marvin Gaye estate suing over the song Blurred Lines. And, it's Pharrell Williams, Robin Thicke. And this was the first time that there was a case where the look and feel of the song won the day. Okay, so meaning there was not a single phrase, chord progression, melody that was one-to-one between the Marvin Gaye original song and then the, Blurred Line song, right? But the jury found that there was copyright infringement because, you could just tell, right? And, we had interviews where, they were talking about how they got so inspired by Marvin Gaye and all this stuff. But it was the look and feel argument. So I go back to, the AI coming and studying stuff. It's very similar as people will study things. But, if AI is going and looking at Getty images, right? And then from that, creating new things. I think you're absolutely right on the whole. This is going to have and is already having an impact on the relevant marketplace as a whole. But we do have to look at this more narrowly, right? So we go in the whole copyright infringement, fair use. It's always about a specific thing. It's not necessarily a whole conversation. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the challenge that I think we're up against. If somebody is, and somebody will, when somebody brings a lawsuit against a generative AI company, they can't just go, hey, theoretically, you're taking work away from us, so we're suing you for that. No, it's going to be thrown in a second. They have to prove or at least have a reasonable case for you. We believe you changed off of our music. Here's why. Here's our evidence for that. And let's say a production music library, like Universal Production, let's say they do something like that. They say, we have reason to believe that you trained off of our music because we were able to prompt your system and it created music that's just like what we got. So we have reason to believe that you were training off of our music without consent. We have no track record of you reaching out to us to ask for permission to do that. And you went to a TV and film client that maybe we had an relationship with or theoretically could have gotten work with. And you went in and served our industry using our data, using our music without our consent. So you're right. I believe that is going to be the challenge of having to do that. I think that's kind of the whole crux of the New York Times lawsuit right now was they were able to prompt ChatGPT to now very creatively. It wasn't a very simple prompt, but they were able to get ChatGPT to spit out basically whole sections of previous New York Times articles word for word, or so similar that it was like exactly the same, right? And so that's what they're saying is like, hey, obviously our data is in your model whole, complete, because if we're able to generate it, we're able to prompt it, even if it's kind of creative prompting, it's in there and it's not transformative if it's just spitting out verbatim. And I actually have an upcoming video coming where I had one of my subscribers basically use Udio to get exact replications of classic Christmas songs, but not Christmas songs that were in the public domain. It seems like a lot of what these Udio and maybe people are not aware of, they might think that Christmas music is public domain because, you know, all the classics are. But not just because Mariah Carey sang a Christmas song, that's not a public domain song. And yes, Mariah Carey's song is coming out of their generative model. So I'm going to put out a really fun video about that in the next couple of
that's oh man, that's fascinating, because the first thing I did when I got on Udio when I was, prepping for my video is I was like, all right, let me actually use this thing. And I go, well, my music, I'm under Miss Crystal. And I go, I wonder if could it learn from my music? Could it help me make my music? And this is something I haven't heard anyone really talk about on, could we use this as a tool as artists ourselves to create stuff like us to make our process more efficient? I don't know how that would work, but anyway, I'm not popular enough. It couldn't find me.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like, I love, what you're saying on like, it is studying from, music that is out there. It's not stuff that is royalty free in the public domain, like all this stuff. It's scrubbing, and I think you've suggested it's scrubbing through Spotify likely. And, are they allowed to do that?
So if you had to put odds on it in the future when we get a sort of final ruling somewhere, especially specifically for the music industry, maybe not so much for text or images or video, but any idea of where you think the courts might come down on this in the next year or two?
I think that, in the process of making, so for example, Udio, if they make it at some point where you are now uploading your original music. And so there's a lot more that is required in the creation of your end product, which was technically assisted or made by AI. Again, I go back to, I think that it's just going to take someone with enough money, someone screaming loudly enough and appealing and doing all the things to change everything. Okay, so just meaning right now, no, we're going to slap down all of the cases in regards to fair use violations, and you can't copyright AI and all this stuff. But I go, in order for there to be change, it would just have to take one. And then I think there would be a ripple effect, and it would have to be something that was made and was very valuable, because, it's that song that was a huge hit and that big feature film and all this stuff. And they go, well, there was human stuff in it. And so I think that where we will see a shift, if at all, would be because of there was an integration. It wasn't necessarily 100% AI. It was because it was a part of the greater thing. And therefore, there should be coverage of all parts, including the AI portion. And we see in other countries, and I think this is in, Japan, where we have copyright laws that are just totally different. We're talking about US laws right now. But in other countries, they will recognize machine-made creations. And so we're seeing how each country is kind of, starting to adapt and react and, do what they're going to do. And that's what we're doing at least right now, as US laws, that we're slapping it down, but it could change pretty quickly.
Yeah, and also I want to ask you your specific point of view on the fair use defense. Do you have an odds on where you think some of these courts might come down, specifically for music cases that might come in the future? Any indication of where? I know nobody knows, but where your hunch, where your instinct maybe leads you to believe?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the, I thought, clearer representations of this, and I don't think there's been a lawsuit on it yet, but there was like this app that when it was all trendy for a second, and it would create portraits of you, right? So a whole bunch of different types of paintings and drawings and things like that. And part of the issue was that in some of the output, there would be like little signatures, and so people were starting to figure out where the source data came from. Like literally, me, Miss Crystal made this picture or whatever, and like my signature shows up on the output thing that was made by the AI. So just literally being like, no, in that case, you being like, oh no, it's fair use. No, it's not fair use. I can literally see parts of my stuff in your output. So, as far as a collective, do we, do away, so to speak, and blur the line even further, and just to say that we're gonna recognize that these things are continuously okay because it is fair use. It's so gray right now. And that's why I'm really diving into this. And I'm really looking at how these different companies are practically doing this, because I know it's affecting me as a musician, as an artist, but I also know how this plays out because I'm a litigation attorney. I am a copyright attorney. And so, we'll see. Every district is different, every state is different, and it's been a crazy ride already.
Oh yeah, and we haven't even really started yet. And so this is just the prelude of I think what's going to be coming in the next couple of years. So yeah, so
Mhm.
obviously everybody stay tuned. Obviously we'll get more updates as this year and next year go on. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up with your personal feelings on the future of the music industry as a whole. I know on your channel and your podcast you talk about many different factors and streaming and social media and even sync and stock licensing. So where are you in terms of your optimism for the future of the music business, music creators with this technology? What are your sort of best case scenarios? Some of these dream amazing, oh, this would be a cool scenario. I could see us really thriving with this. What are maybe your worst case scenarios where you're like, we should be really careful of this. This could be something that could really damage us. Where are your thoughts for the future?
I love having this conversation because internally, right? So my co-host on Top Music Attorney YouTube is that Orko. He's my music producer, and we've been working together forever. And we always talk about this because we have such different takes. When TikTok really kind of broke through and was the new thing, you had to be on there to really just promote your music. And it's like, why wouldn't you? And just like the debates that we would have, because he would just feel like it just made musicians cheesy. And he's like, it just is awful. Like, back in the day, like there was this mystery, and now you got to be like, hey, I ate this for breakfast. Look at my avocado toast. And he goes, just for me and that mindset, I just, have the hardest time with essentially the digital social media age. I hate that, everything is just put out basically for free on, Spotify when you make it. I mean, like the art form feels like it's diluted and or almost gone. So that was the conversation, several years ago. And now with AI, he thinks it's like the end of music entirely. And things are going to take over and all that. My perspective through all this stuff has just been much more positive than that. I think that these things come, and I think that, especially when we talk about big films and the desire to have popular artists involved and having songs and getting placements and all this stuff, I think that in certain areas, stuff is never going to change. Like we just need what we need for reasons outside of just the music sounds good. Like a lot of us are getting hung up, and we're like, well, it's gonna sound exactly like as if someone else did it. Like, and that's gonna end up shaking up the music business so much, and real musicians are gonna go away. I don't think so. And I even said this last night. I go, we can't help ourselves. And I'm the same way, man. I've been in music since I was 4, and it's like I don't know, a disease or something as far as your passion for music. This is one of the hardest industries to be in, to try to do for yourself and to build a career and make money. And we just can't stop though. And I think with that, regardless of other options becoming available, we will adapt and we'll make sure that we always stay in the front end. And that's what we have to do. And that's just the obligation on us.
Great. Love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do think that it's a challenging moment for sure. And many of us have been kind of going into this very deep question of who are we? Because our identity up until this point was we had a little bit of status because we could make some music, right? We could sing, we could play piano. And now a 13-year-old kid with an app can make music that sounds like a hit song. Where
Yeah.
does that put me, right? Because that's a real big kind of shot right in our ego, and I think that's a big challenge that we're all kind of facing right now. Of like, where do I fit in this new world, where what I do isn't that special or unique anymore? And we've been tipping towards that anyways, with way more music creation softwares and literally apps where you could just like type a couple of buttons and loop yourself a little beat or whatever. So this has been kind of a long time coming, but now it feels like we've reached that tipping point where it's like, they use the word democratizing, which I hate, but everybody can make music now. Right? Prompt music, whatever you want to call it. But it's true, right?
Yeah.
We're living in this new world where who are we in the face of all this stuff? But I absolutely agree with you there. What's kind of cool about all this is unsettling as it is, and uncertain and scary it can feel. I have been feeling way more excited about my own original music as a result of AI because I'm like, I know what that's going to do. It's going to be a flood of derivative music, and some of it will be cool. I'm not saying it's all going to be terrible. In fact, I've heard a couple of AI songs that I was literally laughing out loud. It was so funny. but there's going to be this kind of wash of just sort of vanilla whatever out there, and then it makes me wonder, all right, so what am I doing here, and like what is so valuable what I do? And my point of view, and this, I'm curious your point of view. My point of view is not going to be my production skills. It's not going to be my hooks. It's not going to be my melodies. It's not going to be my lyrics. It's not going to be any of that kind of stuff. It's really going to come down to it's me. It's the authentic, actual things I want to say that I really either am visualizing or I have it in my mind and I really want to put through my music. That is the magic sauce of music. And that, I think people can sniff that, they can feel that, and especially if they know there's a human being on the other end of that music, they want to get more and deeper connected to that energy or that emotion or whatever they're doing. So what are your takes on that and how musicians can think about their future and their identities in this new world we're entering?
Yeah, you said it so perfectly. You're talking about brand. The thing that's going to distinguish you from AI and any other person is your brand, your identity, and just the whole showing up on social media, showing who you are. You are not just a person that makes music. You are a colorful personality. You have interests, you have hobbies, you have lots of stuff. You have to show that. And when you show up and make people fall in love with you, which is separate from your music, they fall in love with a song, it makes them feel a certain way, but you make them fall in love with you as a brand that is not something that can just be replaced or made through AI. And so that's something where I go, don't even worry about it. It's the same kind of like there's such an oversaturation in the music business. Everyone is, an artist, and how can I compete? I'm like, stop worrying about that. Worry about yourself, because there's people who dig what you're doing. And maybe you just haven't found them yet. You haven't connected with them yet because you don't show up on social media. And so, I would also just say, pay attention, be aware, but also you also have to put on the blinders and just do your thing. Get to work today. Stop worrying about other people's stuff. Stop worrying about things you can't control and take control of what you can.
Well, that's a perfect place to end this conversation. So thank you so much, Ms. Crystal. Really appreciate your time. Obviously, this is going to be something that we're all going to get smarter and wiser on and more informed about. So once again, thank you for what you're doing with your channel. So you guys could definitely watch that video now that you completed this interview and go get a deeper dive into Udio's terms of service and what your potential legal risks are using not just their service, but any text-to-music service. I know some of us are kind of flirting with these tools, but we're kind of in this uncertain time. So obviously be cautious, be careful, get informed before you make any sort of big moves with these tools. So thanks again for your time. Appreciate it. And hopefully we can get you on in the future as we get maybe some court rulings or some new updates in this space. So thanks so much.
Let's do it.